Hi, everybody. My name's Sandy Beach, and I'm an alcoholic. How you all doing? The reason I'm up here is because I was asked to. I'd just like to lay out what I think is going to happen. We're going to tell some stories and have some fun. And anytime during the meeting you want to go to the bathroom or go get some coffee or whatever, just feel free, because we want to keep this totally relaxed. We're just here to have a good time, and we're here to celebrate this fellowship called Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got started doing this. A friend of mine got a job, and I was sponsoring him. And he had studied to get in the treatment business. And he came to me and he was real nervous. He said, I'm starting this new hospital up here, and I want to get a lot of the local community to come in and mingle with the patients so that they can get sponsors. And he said, I know if you'll come over there and do something, that the local AA community will come over just to listen to your jokes. And then we'll have people, warm bodies, to talk to the patients. So I said, okay, Keith, I'll do that. And he said, you could give the patients a lecture on the 12 steps. And I said, all right, that'll be fine. And I assumed it would be on some weekday night at 8:30. And about 3 months later, he called me up and he said, it's all set. The doctors have approved it. You're on the schedule at 9:30 Saturday morning, which is when I like to sleep. And I said, Keith, I can tell you right now that the AA community is not going to get out of bed on a Saturday morning to go listen to the talk about the steps. And that went on for every Saturday for 18 years. And after about 5 years, I said, oh, I know how I can get out of this. So I wrote the General Service Office. And I said, do you think it's right for the same guy to be leading the same meeting every week? Isn't there some tradition that we're screwing up? So they called some people around the Washington area, and they wrote back and they said, well, we've talked to some people in the Washington area, and they think it's doing a lot of good, so keep doing it. And so that didn't get me out of anything. And so somehow it just kept going. But I'll tell you one day, about a year before I moved down here, I got over there and I went, I think I'm tired of doing this. And I was glad that it was the end of the cycle or whatever So I have mixed emotions tonight, but it is a very exciting thing for me to think about what a remarkable organization AA is. And if that's what I want to do to those of you that are new. Those of you who've been around a while, nothing I'm going to say, you already know. But I want those of you that are new to really understand what a wonderful thing you have walked into, that it is really awesome. In the recorded history of mankind, maybe going back about 4,000 years, there's always been alcoholics. And they've always been outcasts of society, and there's never, ever been anything that could be done for them, except for two organizations. And AA is one of them, but there was one that came along 100 years before AA, around 1842 over in Baltimore. 5 or 6 guys who, were just losing their jobs, their families and all that, and they hung around bars together, and they really were commiserating about the fact that they couldn't stop drinking, that they were hopeless alcoholics. And by chance, at the bar, they go, I wonder, since we can't keep ourselves sober, if we could keep each other sober. And they said, well, I kind of doubt that, but what the heck, we'll give it a shot. So the 5 of them stayed sober. They were just focusing on, Joe's focusing on Fred, and Fred's focusing on Harry, and Harry's focusing on somebody else. And lo and behold, they stay sober. They incorporated some praying. They had God involved. But basically, it was just some guys talking to one another, putting the focus on the other guy. And after a while, they saw that it was succeeding, because what they did, they'd go to a different bar in a different city and find 5 or 6 guys and say, you guys, if you worked on each other, could stay sober. And it caught on. It just caught on. And it was the first thing in this country that was like that. And so they said, well, our first president was Washington, and we're the first sober drunk organization, so we'll call ourselves the Washingtonians. It was just because we're the first. And so this thing got started, and they celebrated the birthday of their organization on Washington's birthday. And it became sort of a tradition within the organization that on the birthday of the Washingtonian Society, they would go in their local community and try and find some politician or church leader or big shot businessman to come and give them a speech sort of acknowledging the contribution they were making to the society. And it was sort of a pat on the back and a morale booster, and it just became a tradition within the Washingtonian Society. And one of the people that addressed the Washingtonians was Abraham Lincoln. And it was before he became president. He was a young lawyer, and there's a speech in the Lincoln's records of the talk that he gave to the Washingtonians. And this organization, in about 4 years, grew to between 100 and 150,000 people. Sober alcoholics. AA in 4 years had less than 100. So you can see that this thing was bound for unbelievable success. But they didn't have the traditions. And they couldn't resist what other organizations have always had problems with, which is success. And with success, whenever you get things rolling like that, you feel that you can do more than you're doing right now. You know what I mean? Yeah, we're helping guys stay sober, but we could help end slavery. Because we're all organized, and we're sober, and we're powerful. We're in hundreds of cities around the country. As a matter of fact, why should we limit ourselves to just helping alcoholics? There's people with lots of problems. We could help people with drug problems. We could help people with health problems. We could just help sad people. You know what I mean? Because we've got a way of life that's really powerful, so we ought to get involved in that. And around that time, there was a movement to end all drinking at all in the United States, and they jumped on that bandwagon big time. And so in looking at our traditions, you would say that perhaps they got diverted from their primary purpose, and perhaps they started taking opinions on outside issues, and within a matter of 6 months, no one was left sober. And the organization vanished. And it vanished so far from the memory and records of this country that 100 years later, in the mid-1940s, when Bill Wilson was wrestling with the terrible problems that Alcoholics Anonymous was having at that time, and he was struggling with the idea of putting together the traditions, because the AAs in Akron and Cleveland were staying too close to the Bible, and the AAs in New York were too loose, and the AAs in California were off the chart, and everybody was claiming that we got to run it this way and we got to run it that way, and we don't need this and we don't need that, and clubhouses were failing, and they were becoming business ventures, and there was just turmoil kind of going around. So Bill saw, he had a lot of wisdom in terms of seeing the big picture for Alcoholics Anonymous. So he was struggling with his own ideas about the traditions, and he knew that it was going to be impossible to ram these down the throats of AAs, because as soon as anybody, what are you working on in New York? I hear you're working on a bunch of rules. Well, good luck, buddy. When you get out here to Wisconsin, we ain't buying any of those rules, so you may as well not even start writing on them. I mean, that was sort of the atmosphere. It's kind of like if your home group doesn't serve decaf and somebody suggests that you do, you go, we've gotten along without it. We don't like change in this group. So no decaf. You know what I mean? It's and while he was working on these in New York, he happened to be talking with somebody about the issues that he was wrestling with. And they said to him, you know, I studied somewhere in history about a thing called the Washingtonian Society that had a lot of recovered alcoholics. And Bill Wilson had never heard of it. So this organization that made AA, put AA to shame, had never even been heard of by Bill. So he went out and studied it and saw the mistakes that they made, and there's a great deal of influence from their failures in our traditions and in the shaping of our organization. And I bring this up because AA is as fragile as we are. It's very important to think of AA as this wonderful organization. And if there wasn't AA, it's just, you know, our first thing, our common welfare has to come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. So anytime we're thinking about however we are working our AA program, what we're saying, what we're doing, we want to look at it in terms of, is this adding to AA unity or dividing AA unity? Is this causing any confusion? Is this diverting us from our primary purpose? We only have one purpose, to help alcoholics who still suffers. And so I know that I sometimes want to come in here and go, look, I know I'm an alcoholic, but I'm struggling with a relationship problem. And so I'm Sandy, and I'm an alcoholic and a relationship problem guy. And that's who I really am. And I want to sort of share that. So then somebody says, you know, I was thinking of asking him to be a sponsor, but he's an alcoholic and something, and I'm not. So maybe I shouldn't ask him. So what are the ground rules? You can be an and I'm a Republican gun control. Okay, well, you shouldn't sponsor somebody who's dealing with overeating. Well, maybe you ought to be dealing with this. And so all these things are very subtle. They're just small. They seem inconsequential. And we could go on. There's all kinds of things we could talk about. But it is something that we want to look at in terms of what would happen if this organization ever met the same fate that the Washingtonians. I mean, that's amazing. Their percentage of the population is, the then population, 100,000 to the then population is a much higher percentage than our 1.5 million compared to the 280 or 300 million that we have now. They had a much higher percentage of the population sober. And so I just bring that up as sort of a background stage that throughout 4,000 years of history, the only thing left is AA. And even AA is only getting about 10%. 90% of all alcoholics die drunk. Don't even get a shot at AA. And the reason, there's been a lot of people who tell you why, but I agree with my buddy Clancy, is that the reason that AA doesn't reach those people is because their case is different. They wished that they were a regular alcoholic that AA takes care of, but they're not. They're much more complicated than that. Their childhood was different. They have other problems. They're too rich. They're too poor. They got too much attention as a child. They came from the north. They should have been from the south. They didn't get any attention as a child. Oh, how I wish I was just an alcoholic. And then I could join Alcoholics Anonymous. And so people by the thousands are just dying, not that AA wouldn't work for them, but that they've decided in their minds that their case is different. And that's why I won't be coming in. And it's a real tragedy. So those of us that get the calling for AA, and it's a spiritual event. We don't look back on it as a spiritual event. It's hard to think of a great big cop who pulled you over for DWI as one of God's messengers sent to transform your entire life, but that's what's happening. Because we don't qualify. Why am I here? And those other 10 people don't even get a shot at it. Why are you here? And those other 10 people don't get a shot at it. I don't know. But I know what I think it's all about It's so that we can help the next person. It's so that we can be transformed and reach out and help the next alcoholic. This fragile fellowship that got started in 1935 I'm going to talk. Oh, let me just tell you what I plan on doing is it'll take 12 weeks. We'll go through all 12 steps, but there's going to be history woven in and traditions and stories and things like that. So it may be on week 4 that we're still on step 3, and then 5 and 6 will come zicking out in 1 week or something like that. But it'll be just sort of weaving along, and when the clock says it's over, then it's over. Because anybody knows the secret to a good talk is stopping on time. That is the ground rule number 1. And up in Washington and in other parts of the country, when I got sober, there were 9 or 10 speaker meetings for every discussion meeting. So speak. You're speaking everywhere. And there was 2 speakers. Like we have that Saturday night. You got up there for 25 minutes and blah, blah, blah. And so you were, the average newcomer spoke at least 6 times a year, maybe more. And it was just running around. And I think it was like the 3rd time I was speaking with my sponsor. And we got to this meeting, and I don't know, I was so excited about something. And I just got up there and blah, 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 blah. And finally I got to the end of something and just felt like, oh boy. And I went and sat down. And I could see the room was like, whoa, they were in a sort of a state of something. And 55 minutes had elapsed. And my sponsor was the second speaker. So the secretary got up and they passed the basket, and now there's 1 minute left in the hour. And they said, and now for our second speaker, Bill T. And my sponsor's a big guy, and he terrified me when he came to my house. And we were both still in the Marine Corps, and he was like, whoa, the infantry Marine, and I was like the pilot Marine, like. I prefer to be driven to my plane. I don't like to walk. So he's this. So he gets up to the microphone and he says, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Terwilliger. I'm an alcoholic. Our Father, who art in heaven. And that was the end of the meeting. And I've never gone over since. Ever. Anywhere in the world, never have I gone over in a talk. So I was talking about this fragile thing of AA, and look at the people that gets collected into AA. I mean, we're not normal. This is not a room full of mature, healthy people. I mean, just people don't come to AA and survey us. You've read in the 12 and 12 what they said when they surveyed all the alcoholics: childless, immature, grandiose. That was the thing. So it's hardly anybody's going to come into AA and interview you and me and all the people around here and walk away. You know what I noticed? They're all so mature and grown up. Like, that's not going to happen. They're just going to say, that's a miracle, that program. That is a miracle, what's going on in there, because these people are out there performing in society. They're contributing. They're doing all this, and it shouldn't be possible. It should not be possible. And that's what's this wonderful miracle about Alcoholics Anonymous. But it's this very fragile. We're all individuals. We all got all our opinions. It's too hot. There's probably somebody in here going, it's really too hot. There's somebody over here going, God, I wish they'd turn the air on. Need some help here. And yet it's all held together. What holds it together is our willingness to compromise with each other. We got to meet each other halfway on things. We've got to not insist on having our own way. And this is our spiritual program, is giving up on having our own way. And I'm sort of getting around to the steps now when I'm talking about these things. But AA has no way of disciplining anybody. It has no way of enforcing anything. We talk about the steps being suggestions, and we got these traditions that nobody can enforce. There was an AA group in Richmond when it first formed that decided to serve beer at the meetings because they felt that whiskey was the only alcohol and beer was just a chaser, and so they just said, we'll just serve beer at the meetings. Well, you can imagine. I mean, so what do you think would be going on in the gossip channels around Tampa if somebody out in Lutz had started a meeting where they're serving beer? AA's going to fall apart. That'll be the end of AA. Bleep, bleep, beep, bleep, beep. And there's nothing anybody can do. The letter came from General Service. We don't think that's a good idea, serving beer at meetings and all that. But there wasn't anything anybody could do about it. And what happened, like all bad ideas, it fell of its own weight. And people started forgetting what night of the week the meeting was. And it just disappeared. But there was no AA Gestapo that could go over there and force this meeting. So if you want to start a meeting and have it 6 hours long with 12 speakers and 13 breaks and have pizza sent in and no coffee allowed, that's it. I mean, it's just that much freedom. And the steps, there's suggestions, there's nobody really keeping track of us. So what holds AA together? And I think it's very simple. What holds AA together is alcohol. That's what holds AA together, is alcohol. This disease is relentless. It's just always there. Nobody can get away with anything. You can't just not do the steps and not go to meetings and live your life happily ever after. Nobody does that. It's like, oh, you've decided to not try this, you're going to stay sober on your own, and then we hear the horror stories. Back out, bam, bam, bam. And that's where open minds come from. Beatings. It's very simple. You just go back and let alcohol give you an open mind if you don't have one yet. A lot of times we think it's because I heard something enlightening at the meeting and I said, oh, that would be wonderful. Well, more than likely that wasn't it at all. It was that alcohol got a hold of you and pushed you down in that toilet one last time, and you came back and said, what's this step crap? And your mind was open. And as soon as it's open, all kinds of wonderful things can happen. Because now we're down to what is the core of the program. We have our meetings, conventions, we have all of our service work, and we got some people here that are wonderful service. Suzanne and Angelo and others that I know are just devote themselves to this. Absolutely essential to AA. The groups, the coffee makers, the literature, the books, the pamphlets, the grapevine, everything that is going on all over the world are absolutely essential. But that has nothing to do with sobriety. It has nothing to do with the disease of alcoholism. That's the administrative function. That's to give us the environment so that you and I as individuals will end up taking a series of actions that we don't believe in called the 12 steps. That's what the whole deal is all about. The purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous is to enable the alcoholic to find a power that can relieve them of the disease of alcoholism. That's what it is. That's the whole point of AA, is to enable the alcoholic to find a power greater than themselves that can relieve them of the disease of alcoholism. We have a reprieve, a spirit. We have this disease lifted out of us a day at a time, and we can go on and be free from the torture of alcoholism. That's what AA is. And unless I take those actions as an individual, that freedom will not come. There's a wonderful pamphlet called A Member's Eye View of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I would recommend anybody, if you haven't read it, it's really cool. And it's an excellent author was asked to give a presentation about Alcoholics Anonymous to a medical convention and explain AA to a bunch of doctors. So he sat down and wrote this pamphlet, A Member's Eye View of Alcoholics Anonymous, And it was the only manuscript that was sent to General Service Office. They didn't change a word. And if you knew General Service Office, you would know that this does not happen very often. Because like everywhere else, we tend to get a little bureaucratic, and everybody has the sense that I could change a word here, change a word there, we ought to do this. And his pamphlet was left intact. And one of the things that stuck in my mind was he was tackling the thought that if you go to enough AA meetings, it'll rub off. It'll rub off on you. And he said, yes, it does rub off. And you know what rubs off? Death. That was a very interesting thing. He said you can sit at meeting after meeting after meeting, while I'm quoting him, while mental, physical, and spiritual rigor mortis sets in. And what it's saying is, I can't come here and get sober on your effort in the 12 steps. I can be inspired by it. I can go, wow, that guy really, or that gal really had a transformation, so I'm going to go try the same thing myself, and then the same results will happen to me. And so this atmosphere that we're in is conducive to causing us to do that, and that's why we come back. I think it's so important that we attend these meetings and are with each other on a constant basis to remind us of what the solution is. Because my mind, I came here in 1964, my mind on a weekly basis to this day keeps coming up with, hey, you've just run into a situation here that requires your special talent and not the program. This particular problem is the exception to the 12 steps. Because I've studied it. It's got a lot of wrinkles that really aren't covered by the 12 steps, and I think the old pro ought to get in there and handle this little baby all by himself. I'm not calling my sponsor. He'll just run me back into the steps. I know what he's going to say. I know what the hell he's going to say before I even call him. This little baby, this particular thing requires me to, and here come up with my plan. And we all know what happens. You know, about a week later, everybody we see is going, what's wrong? What's the matter? What's the matter? Nothing. Just that I've decided to manage something on my own, which is what we all did before we got here. And our pride, pride is awesome. Pride is wonderful. I wish I was still, every time I hear the song, I did it my way, I just go, God, I wish that song had come out when I was drinking, because that would have been my theme song. You know what I mean? I did it my way, and it was sort of, I know everybody else is that way. I know there's the 12 steps. I know there's all these other things. But I do it my way. I'm in jail right now, and I'm going down the tube very shortly. But you don't see me chickening out and asking for help. You don't see me deviating from my plan. I love my plan. I like thinking up stuff myself, and I like sticking to it. I've got convictions, and I stick to them. It's called a closed mind. And we get convictions that involve a judge. And we get, there's all kinds of things that happen. And so it is very jolting to come out of that world, the intellectual, ego-driven, self-centered world, into the spiritual world, because it's a whole new set of rules. These are all different. None of those apply that we learned before. None of those apply anymore. And it just seems like, well, I could hear it doesn't apply to this, or it doesn't apply to that, but it doesn't apply to anything anymore. And it's very hard to make this transition. I mean, all these paradoxes. You really want to beat this? Well, you're going to have to give up. Well, I was in the Marine Corps, and they're talking, okay, the secret to this, you're going to have to just, surrender has to become automatic. And I'm going, surrender has to become automatic. Has the Commandant heard about this organization that surrender is going to become automatic? I don't think I better tell anybody back at Quantico about this organization. Surrender has to become automatic. Well, when do I apply myself? When do I think? When do I get to go? You don't. But I don't understand. Why would I do? Well, let me ask you this, and it went something like this, and you've probably had the same kind of conversation with your sponsor. He goes, let me see. You've been living your life on your own resources, sort of self-will. You just see a problem, you go after it. You don't ask for help, you don't ask you just go. It's you just full speed ahead. That's sort of the way you. Yeah. Do you pray and meditate? No, I don't do any of that. Do you have spiritual advisors? No, I don't talk to any spiritual advisors. You read a lot of spiritual literature? No, I don't read any of that spiritual literature. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. So how's it going? That's the question. How's it going? And I remember my sponsor going, Sandy, I hear what you're saying. You're defending your plan for living. And all of you, when you came here, are trying to defend your plan for living. You know why? Because you thought it up. You know what I mean? You're the one who put it together. You have, it's like, well, what is your plan for living? I like to eat a lot of pie, and I like to get going on this, and I like to do that, and I always get mad at this, and that's me. That's who I am. That's my plan. Never trust anybody that won't drink with you. Never do this, whatever. And where do we get this plan? Well, we have heard two things in church. We had 3 6-year-old guys came over and said, here's a good plan. So we took that down. And I got a lot of stuff off of bathroom walls. I was in there going, whoa, that's amazing. I put together all this stuff, and the thing about your plan or my plan for living is it's mine. You know what I'm saying? That's who I am. It's my plan for living. And so Bill, and I'm prepared to argue with you. How many times at a bar have you argued? Oh, your plan for living? Let me tell you why that's no good. I'm going to listen to mine. I've borrowed a little from here, a little from William James, a little from Shakespeare, a little of this, and you went on late until midnight and about whose plan for living and blah, blah, blah. And whoever could talk the best had the best plan. But not in AA. You don't hear anybody in AA talking and listening to your plan. You know what I mean? Have you ever gone to a meeting and the leader said, yeah, now that you mention that, let's put the 12 steps aside and listen to what newcomer Fred has to say. Sounds like he might have a better plan than we do back there. This just doesn't go on. My sponsors, I was going on, I went, well, look, Bill, I know, I said, you went to Indiana University. I went to Yale University. There's a big difference from that. Let me explain what we learned up in New Haven about some of this spirituality and religiosity. I skimmed through the book here. It's got a lot of that religiosity and this and that. He said, Sandy, I'm having a hard time giving any serious attention to a guy who's wearing a wristband from a nut ward. And I remember later at meetings I started tucking it up under my shirt, and because people didn't want to listen to somebody who was still an outpatient from a nut ward, even though he was brilliant and had awesome ideas to share with them. So what does AA do? AA is going to deal with results. Yeah, we understand your theory. What kind of results? I see you're in handcuffs. All right, well, we're not in handcuffs. Have you noticed that? Let's see, you're shaking, we're not. We're talking now, you're the new person, and this is AA. Okay, you're wearing clothes that are borrowed from your cousin. We're wearing clothes that fit. We have business cards with our own names on them. We have automobiles with current registrations. We have people, if you call on the phone, will say good things about us. We have people loaning us money. And then there's you, with your brilliant plan for living. So the reason you keep losing whenever you get into a discussion in AA is all we talk about is results. I see, that's a very interesting theory you have. But you're a very bad advertisement for your book. If you're going to write a book about how to live, keep your picture off the cover. That's what I would suggest. So I guess you're getting a flavor for why a new person has such a hard time being heard in AA. Because the results of your plan, I mean, when you get here, you're at the bottom of something, and no one wants to hear how to get there. We all know. So what is this the beginning of? Why go through all this routine, fooling around with bringing your plan and this and that? It's because we have to let go of that thing. We have to let go of the most precious thing to us, which is our way of thinking. And that's what spirituality is. It is a replacement for that plan. Instead of trying to figure life out ourselves and setting goal of what I'm going to be and then go get it, we're going to totally surrender all that and seek guidance. We're going to try to establish contact with a navigation system that's going to lead each one of us to our own greatest good. Because the things that we thought would make us happy didn't, and the things we never thought would make us happy do. Whoever thought that 12-step work would make you happier than anything you've ever done? Would you ever have thought that up? Whoever before they got to AA would have said, you know, my favorite thing is my Thursday night women's meeting. That's my favorite thing of everything there is in the world. I mean, you, the rock and roller over at the disco club, and say, you know, next year you're going to be saying my favorite thing in the whole world is my Thursday night women's meeting and we discuss this or whatever it is. And you would have said, you're crazy. I know myself better than that. And we don't know ourselves. We don't know ourselves at all. All these ideas we have about ourselves are wrong. And that's what we get rid of. We're not a piece of junk. We're not this horrible person. We're not insecure and afraid and no good and rotten. That's wrong. That's not it at all. We're going to shed all that. We're going to just get rid of all of that. And we're going to allow the process of the 12 steps to reveal the truth to us by following the examples of others. And when this transformation takes place, we begin to love ourselves from the inside out. And when that happens, it's real easy to stay sober. Because alcoholism, we get into the first step, which is powerless over alcohol, and I'll spend the last 10 minutes or so on that. The 12 and 12 says that the AA's 12 steps, what are they? And there's just this one little sentence that says what they are. They're a group of spiritual principles. That's what AA's 12 steps are. And it goes on to say, if you will practice these as a way of life, it will enable you, the sufferer, to become happily and usefully whole. That's what the 12 steps are. They're a group of principles that if you follow them as a way of life, will enable you to become happily and usefully whole. You'll be a complete person, happy and useful, giving. Everything that we had before was flipped the wrong way. We thought our problem was that we needed to get more from the world. It felt like we had nothing. And the real problem was we had to open up so that we could give to the world. That's what will make us happy. And we, no, I need more money. Well, I need this and I need that. Incorrect diagnosis. And so alcohol for us was an answer. It was not a problem. When I talk about, and when AA talks about you being powerless over alcohol, and I say this for those of you that are brand new, and you got to listen to this closely, the problem in the disease of alcoholism that kills you is not the fact that when you drink you get all screwed up. That is not the part of the disease that kills you. As a matter of fact, that is hardly a problem, and I'm going to explain that. If that was your only problem, that whenever you drink you get all screwed up, that's it, that's your total problem, then you would be like somebody who was allergic to something. And you don't know why, but sometimes when you go out to eat, you end up having shortness of breath, you break out in rashes, and you get a high fever, and you fall on the ground, they take you to the hospital, they give you stuff to get rid of it, but they don't know what it is. And finally somebody does some tests and they go, your problem is strawberries. Whenever you eat strawberries, you're going to have this big attack. Whenever you drink alcohol, you're going to get all screwed up. So the strawberry guy or gal says, thank you. I really appreciate that. And the next time they're over at somebody's house, they said, hey, we're having strawberry shortcake for supper tonight. No, thanks. I don't think I'll have any strawberry shortcake. Or they go, how about a strawberry soda? No, thanks. I don't think I'll have a strawberry soda. They don't get together with other people who can't eat strawberries. And have little meetings. God, I saw a strawberry-colored car go by today. And I just went in and got a box of strawberries. And now I got this reaction, and it's killing me. So if our only problem was whenever we drank, we got all screwed up, all we'd have to do to be problem-free is don't drink. Then we'd all be happy and just go on our way. But that's not the problem, is it? The problem occurs when we don't drink. That's when my problem was at its worst. The more I didn't drink, the more I got sober. And sober was when it hurt the most. I couldn't stand being sober. I could hardly wait for 5 o'clock. Okay, I've been sober 8 hours and counting. 8 hours and 10 minutes, 8 hours and 11 minutes. When it gets to be 8 hours and 30 minutes, this sober stuff is gone. And I'm going to fix it. So what am I fixing? See, alcohol is fixing something. It's fixing the fact that I'm uncomfortable in my own skin. It's fixing the fact that something's wrong with me. That I'm not the same as everybody else. That I'm uncomfortable. I'm so afraid I really can't be creative. I can't be myself. I can't loosen up. I can't fit in with anybody. But when I drink, that problem goes away. And now I absolutely feel wonderful with everybody. I sit around and I'm happy. And alcohol solves my problem of alcoholism. Yeah, it has side effects and gives us liver damage and it does all these crazy things. But the thing that kills alcoholics occurs when there's no alcohol in our system. We're stone cold sober. We've been to treatment 3 times. We've been to AA meetings up the yin-yang, but we haven't done any steps and we haven't surrendered. We understand alcoholism as well as the people who write the books. We can talk about it endlessly. Well, alcoholism begins at a fetal syndrome, go on and on and on and on and on. And we're liable to be standing in our bar because the bartender's still our favorite friend, and his name is Larry. And we're going, Larry, I'm a freaking alcoholic, man. And I've been talking to the doctor. That's the 3 times you're out. I mean, my liver is right on the edge of boom. And my wife, one more drink, she's gone. My boss said, you're through. I mean, I smell one trace. Could I have a beer? One trace of alcohol on my breath. Thanks. And I'm dead. And the bartender's looking at, everybody who watched us drink thought we were crazy. We're explaining to them what's going to happen to us if I take this drink and we take it anyway. There's no alcohol in my system before I take that first drink. That's when I'm powerless over alcohol. What's the big book say? We have no defense against the first drink. That's the part of the disease that kills us. It's the fact that you and I, on our own, cannot avoid taking the first drink. And why can't we avoid taking it? Because sobriety hurts too much. That's why when somebody says to you, why don't you just stop drinking? We go, are you kidding? I'll be sober for 40, 50 years. 50 years of this much pain? I don't think so. I'd rather die drunk. And we got a good point. So alcohol fixes a problem. That's why the temptation to drink is so great. Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps remove that problem. And there's nothing for alcohol to fix. That's what sobriety is. That's why it's easy to walk by a drink, because there's nothing that drink can fix. I just go, hello, drink. See, I don't need you. I have been working these steps, and I have removed the barriers that stand between me and my higher power. We call them character defects. And I've opened up a channel so that this spiritual energy comes in and energizes me, much in the way that a drink did, from the inside out, and makes me drink-proof. You know, we're bulletproof, well, I'm drink-proof when I have this spiritual armor. There's nothing for the drink to fix. So admitting that we're powerless, that's why we spend so much time, and you'll find that if you come back to these, that we get to step 2, step 3, we always come back through step 1 to remind ourselves of powerlessness, because that is the secret, the 12 and 12 calls it the bedrock of a spiritual life. You'd think they'd say prayer, meditation, reading spiritual things. No, powerlessness is the secret of a happy spiritual life. Always surrendering, hey, I'm powerless, man. I'm powerless. That opens the door for everything to come in. Because if you have analyzed your alcoholism and you conclude that powerless, yes, almost. I'm sort of in the 97% powerless. I see this guy over here, yeah, obviously powerless, and that lady back there, that's like 100%. I'm damn near. I mean, I'm that close. I'll go that far. I am really close to being powerless. Like, really close. I'm almost totally powerless. Well, if you're almost totally powerless, then you almost need to do the steps. And you almost need a sponsor, and you almost really need these meetings. And you know something? You almost get sober. I mean, you are this close to getting sober. It's kind of like almost having a parachute. You know what I mean? The plane blows up, everybody's out flowing down there, and you go, you know, I almost picked one of those damn things up. That's not a good spot to be in. And our literature suggests that people have been sober for years who are not happy, not content in this program, are scratching their head, wondering, what am I doing wrong? What is it about this program that I just am not doing right? And guess what it was? When we did the first step, we didn't take it 100%. And then the rest of the program can't work. It just can't. And we're wondering, what is it? I have the wrong sponsor? Have I got to go do this? Have I got to go do that? We never totally surrendered. So this step, we'll just keep reviewing it each week. Because once we do the 100%, then we need the rest of the program. It's no longer optional. And we eagerly go after it because it's the only answer to powerlessness. We can't study our way out of powerlessness. You can't learn your way out of powerlessness. You can only be taught and led to a personal higher power that takes care of this powerless situation, so you're free to have a great life. And you don't do anything about it. You don't generate the power. You just are taught through the steps how to get contact with this. It's like having a power tool. You got to go find some place to plug it in. And that's what we'll be talking about over the next 11 weeks is how we solve this wonderful problem of powerlessness and why it's so much fun and why people in AA have one of the greatest lives there is. We're exactly at the end of the time. Let's just stand and say the Lord's Prayer and wrap it up.